Letters on Savitri by Arnolд Shirabindo, page 10. Sri Aurobindo says, as to the many criticisms contained in your letter, I have a good deal to say. Some of them bring forward questions of the technique of mystic poetry, about which I wanted to write in an introduction to Savitri when it is published, and I may as well say something about that here. Rapid transitions from one image to another are a constant feature in Savitri as in most mystic poetry. I am not here building a long, sustained single picture of the dawn with a single continuous image or variations of the same image. I am describing a rapid series of transitions piling one suggestion upon another. There is first a black quietude, then the persistent touch, then the first beauty and wonder leading to the magical gate and the loosened corner. Then the failing of the darkness, the smiley used, a falling cloak suggesting the rapidity of the change. Then, as a result, the change of what was once a rift into a wide luminous gap. If you want to be logically consistent, you can look at the rift as a slit in the cloak which becomes a big tear. Then all changes into a brief, perpetual sign, the iridescence, then the blaze and the magnificent aura. In such a race of rapid transitions, you cannot bind me down to a logical chain of figures or classical monotone. The mystic muse is of an inspired bacchantic of Dionysian wine than an orderly housewife. Again, do you seriously want me to give an accurate scientific description of the earth half in darkness and half in light so as to spoil my impressionist symbol? Or else to revert to the conception of earth as a flat and immobile surface? I am not writing a scientific treatise. I am selecting certain ideas and impressions to form a symbol of a partial and temporary darkness of the soul and nature, which seems to a temporary feeling of that which is caught in the night as if it were universal and eternal. One who is lost in that night does not think of the other half of the earth as full of light. To him, all is night, and the earth forsaken wanderer in an enduring darkness. Sri Aurobindo says, if I sacrifice this impressionism and abandon the image of the earth wheeling through dark space, I might as well abandon the symbol altogether, for this is a necessary part of it. As a matter of fact, in the passage itself, earth in its wheeling does come into the dawn and pass from darkness into the light. You must take the idea as a whole and in all its transitions and not press one detail with too literal an insistence. In this poem, Sri Aurobindo says, I present constantly one partial view of life or another temporarily as if it were the whole in order to give full value to the experience of those who are bound by that view, as for instance the materialist conception and experience of life. But if anyone charges me with philosophical inconsistency, then it only means that he does not understand the technique of the overmind interpretation of life. Sri Aurobindo says, I come next to the passage which you so violently attack about the inconscient waking ignorance. In the first place, the word formless is indeed defective, not so much because of the repetition, but because it is not the right word or idea, and I was not myself satisfied with it. I have changed the passage as follows. And then Sri Aurobindo says, Then something in the inscrutable darkness stirred, a nameless moment, an unthought idea, insistent, dissatisfied, without an aim, something that wished but knew not how to be, teased the inconscient to wake ignorance. And then Sri Aurobindo says, but the teasing of the inconscient remains, and evidently you think that it is bad poetic taste to tease something so bodiless and unreal as the inconscient. But here, several fundamental issues arise. First of all, are words like inconscient and ignorance necessarily an abstract technical jargon? If so, do not words like consciousness and knowledge, etc., undergo the same ban? Is it meant that they are abstract philosophical terms and can have no real or concrete meaning, cannot represent things that one feels and senses, or most often fight as one feels a visible foe? Sri Aurobindo says the inconscient and the ignorance may be mere empty abstractions and can be dismissed as irrelevant jargon if one has not come into collision with them or plunged into the dark and bottomless reality. But to me, they are realities, concrete powers, whose resistance is present everywhere and at all times in its tremendous and boundless mass. In fact, in writing this line, I had no intention of teaching philosophy or forcing in an irrelevant metaphysical idea, although the idea may be there in implication. I was presenting a happening that was to me something sensible and, as one might say, psychologically and spiritually concrete. The inconscient comes in persistently in the cantus of the first book of Savitri, for example. And then Sri Aurobindo says, opponent of that glory of escape, the black inconscient swung its dragon tail, lashing a slumberous infinite by its force into the deep obscurities of form. And then Sri Aurobindo says, there too a metaphysical idea may be read into or behind the thing seen. But does that make it technical jargon or the whole thing an illegitimate mixture? It is not so to my poetic sense. But you might say it is so to the non-mystical reader, and it is that reader whom you have to satisfy, as it for the general reader that you're writing and not for yourself alone. And then Sri Aurobindo says, but if I had to write for the general reader, I could not have written Savitri at all. It is in fact for myself that I have written it, and for those who can lead themselves to the subject matter, images and technique of mystic poetry. This is a real stumbling block of mystic poetry, and especially mystic poetry of this kind. The mystic feels real and present, even ever present to his experience, intimate to his beings, truths to the ordinary reader are intellectual abstractions or metaphysical speculations. He is writing of experiences that are foreign to the ordinary mentality. Either they are unintelligible to it, and in meeting them it flounders about as if in an obscure abyss, or it takes them as poetic fancies expressed in intellectual devised images. That's how a critic in the Hindu condemned such poems as Nirvana and Transformation. He said that they were mere intellectual conceptions and images, and there was nothing of religious feeling or spiritual experience. Yet Nirvana was as close as a transcription of a major experience as could be given in the language coined by the human mind of realization, in which the mind was entirely silent and into which no intellectual conception could at all enter. One has to use words and images in order to convey to the mind some perceptions, some figure of that which is beyond thought. The critic's understanding may be made worse by such a line as, only the illimitable permanent is here. And then Sri Aurobindo gives a part of the Savitri here, a stanza rather. Sri Aurobindo says, all is abolished, but the mute alone. The mind from thought released, the heart from grief grow inexistent, now beyond belief. There is no I, no nature, known, unknown. The city, a shadow picture without tone, floats, quivers, unreal, forms without relief, flow, a cinema's vacant shapes, like a reef, foundering in shoreless gulfs, the world is done. Only the illimitable permanent is here. A piece, stupendous, featureless, still replaces all. What once was I in it, a silent, unnamed emptiness, content either to fade in the unknowable or thrill with the luminous seal of the infinite. These are the words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo.